So, like a month ago, I made this video about an Asus notebook I found in a dumpster. But apart from the computer, I also found some other junk. And in amongst the pile of trash I found was this Western Digital hard drive. You can actually see it in a couple of shots in that video. And people were naturally very curious about it. They wanted to know if I was going to test it out. They were also super curious about this dumpster of mine. They're like, oh man, don't forget to check the dumpster this morning. You might find another computer in there. But I've been living in this neighborhood for the past 10 years and I've never once found anything of value. That notebook was just a complete fluke. And to be honest, I wasn't even going to do anything with that hard drive. I mean, it was a mechanical hard drive sitting in that dumpster for Lord knows how long, and I really had no hope of any of these things being functional. But hey, the computer ended up working, so I couldn't just recycle this hard drive before at least checking it first. But before diving into that, let me just take a moment to talk about my Patreon. I don't really have any other social media, and I use Patreon to connect and chat with my fans. So if you'd like to chat with me, have early access to my videos and some extra content, you can join for as little as $1 a month or more if you'd like. Thanks, and on with the story about this hard drive. This thing was a 500GB 7200 RPM Western Digital Blue hard drive. It was in some sort of a weird caddy enclosure, which made me think it was part of a server or something. So before testing it, I just kind of wanted to get it out of there. I pulled the plastic rails from the metal enclosure and it seemed to just slide out. The rails didn't seem screwed down, so I just popped it out of there with a bit of force. So at this point it was just a regular SATA hard drive, but before testing it I wanted to make sure that it turns on first. Instead of hooking it up to like a motherboard, I've decided to use this external hard drive enclosure I use for all sorts of things really. Testing old hard drives and optical drives and also using them as external units. But I also use it with more modern SATA interfaces because I have this little cheap converter board, which takes the IDE cable and also Molex for power and converts that to standard SATA female end. And then you just use a USB B to A cable and a little power supply to power the unit externally. So after setting this thing up on my desk and making sure it was all plugged in, it was time to give it a test. I powered the unit on, flicked the switch, and I was very anxious to see whether or not it was going to spin up or not. And to my amazement, it just whirled back to life. Better still, when looking at my desktop, I could see 2 volumes popping up. So this thing wasn't just powering on and working, it actually had some data on it, which gave me all sorts of ideas about finding bitcoins and other cryptocurrencies. So the disk utility indeed showed that there was a 500GB hard drive divided into 2 partitions. For some reason, there was a 180GB partition and a 320GB one. After doing some digging, I could see that the 180GB partition definitely had Windows installed on it. Just by looking at the files, I couldn't really tell which version of Windows it was. But I did stumble upon this screenshot, which to me looked like Windows 10, but it was actually Windows 11. I haven't actually used Windows 11 that much, so I couldn't tell them apart. So I've spent a couple of minutes digging around this partition, but I also wanted to check what was on the other volume. And that one had a folder called Turning Red, and I had no idea what that was, but it turns out it was an animated film made quite recently. I'm totally sure it was legitimately downloaded. So anyway, I was pretty happy and frankly blown away that this thing was working. And even though I found a couple of interesting files, since this thing had a Windows installation on it, I just wanted to see a computer boot from it, which meant I had to go get myself a working system I can stick this thing in. Now, if you've been watching this channel, you probably know that I live in a pretty small apartment and I just can't keep all the electronics there with me. And I have some storage space in my basement and yeah, this thing is pretty bad. It's filled with all sorts of junk and it's really unorganized. And you might wonder, how the hell can you keep this stuff like that, man? That's disgusting. But since I'm going to be moving in a couple of months, I unfortunately just didn't bother. And it really sucks when I have to go dig something out of there because, I mean, look at it. I really don't like doing this. Okay, so the computer I'd like to get to is, I think it's this one. Yeah, and to get to it I have to move all that, and I really have nowhere to move this, but we're gonna try. Oh god. This is a iMac I got for like $5.
Oh no, I'll have to do this with two
So
hands.
I use my selfie camera to take these shots, so it looks kind of awful because there's no light in there. People tell me like, dude, you should go dumpster diving more often. You could find interesting junk and computers to feature on the channel. But I mean, man, look at this. George Lucas could probably make a trilogy on all this trash. Not only do I not have anywhere to put it, but trash picking really takes a long time and it's kind of hit or miss. Unless I guess you fake your videos, which I don't intend to do. But on occasion I do find some interesting things, especially at my friend the recycler. And if it makes for an interesting video, you can rest assured that I'm gonna feature it on my channel. So anyway, I finally dug this thing out, so it was time for phase 2, which is lugging this thing to the freaking 6th floor. And man, this is another reason why I hate coming down there. There's no elevator in my apartment building, so anytime I have to fetch something from the basement, it's a major pain in the ass. I just can't wait to move to a house where we're gonna have space to organize all this. So after passing our friend the dishwasher, which somebody left here ages ago, I finally came up to my floor. Yeah, I have a Nintendo doormat I should really clean. But no time for that now because we have to get this thing in and see whether or not we can boot off of that hard drive. The astute among you might recognize this PC as my $4 computer I featured in a previous video. And even though this one didn't come from the trash, I still like when these computers make a repeated appearance in my videos. And this one is quite unremarkable. It's a Core 2 Duo machine I've set up for XP gaming. And the reason I thought it would be a good fit is when I got it, it actually had a Windows 10 installation on it. So I unscrewed this thing and took off the side panel. I took off the SATA cables from the previous hard drive and I reconnected them to my new mystery drive. Since this thing wouldn't be installed in the case permanently, I just set it there on top of the old hard drive. I've actually placed it on top of a microfiber cloth just so that it doesn't rattle around or short anything out. After that, it was time to set it up on my desk and see whether or not it was all going to work. I've plugged in the power, video cable, and also the Bluetooth dongles for my keyboard and mouse. And after pressing the power button, I could see that the computer powers on and posts successfully. But unfortunately, it just wouldn't boot from that hard drive. It would just sit at this verifying DMI pool data message. So naturally, I've tried setting the priorities in the boot menu section, and I could see that the computer was indeed recognizing the hard drive. It just wouldn't boot from it. So just to make sure there wasn't anything wrong with the cables or something, I swapped the hard drive for the old one that was in there before. Coincidentally enough, this is also a Western Digital Blue 500GB hard drive, and it had no problem at all booting into Windows XP. So after swapping the hard drive again and making sure everything was set correctly in the BIOS, the thing still wouldn't boot. And I thought perhaps since some of the Windows files got corrupted or something, I'll try booting off of the USB stick and I'll try going through the whole Windows repair option. And again, since at this point I didn't really know which installation of Windows this thing had, I just went with Windows 10. But no matter what I did, it just wouldn't boot from it. And I do know for a fact that this is a working bootable Windows USB since I used it in another computer recently. So naturally I wanted to try a bootable DVD, but if you guys remember, this thing really has issues reading DVDs properly. And even though I did have a copy of Windows 10 boot disk, it just wouldn't read it. It made like weird noises and it just wouldn't spin up the disk at all. And just out of curiosity, I tried a Windows XP boot disk because it's on a CD. And the computer was actually able to read and boot off of this thing. And the main thing I was just curious to try was the recovery console. It's this super old school setup and I knew it wouldn't work probably, but I just wanted to give it a shot. So I ran the check disk utility and it said that the volume appears to contain one or more unrecoverable problems, which is totally to be expected. So even though this hard drive was clearly visible in the BIOS and also in this utility, this computer just wouldn't boot from it to save its life. So even though I really didn't feel like it, it was time to make another trip to my basement junkyard. And just my luck, the computer I wanted to get to was all the way at the bottom, underneath all of that crap. But I guess one positive thing about these modern cheap builds is that they're light as a feather compared to the old cases. So I again schlepped this thing up to the 6th floor and I've set it up on my desk in place of the old one. So after hooking all the cables in and making sure that it powers on and boots properly, I proceeded to take off the side panel and to install the mystery hard drive. But again, unfortunately, upon powering the computer on with the new hard drive, it just wouldn't boot from it. It would just load forever and then restart. So unfortunately, we're back at the recovery menu. But this time the system actually seemed to recognize that there was a Windows 11 installation on this hard drive. And after trying to load the operating system through this repair utility, it actually booted. Okay, nearly missed it. Woohoo! Can't believe it's actually gonna be. Oh my god, we're in! Time to look for those bitcoins. The funny thing is, even if I found a Bitcoin, I don't think I would have recognized it because I don't use cryptocurrency, so I don't even know where to look for. But still, we have some interesting things here to explore. This is actually Windows 11, so this can't be that old. I wonder why someone would throw a perfectly good hard drive with the installation still on it in the dumpster. But again, that's what I was wondering about the laptop too, so who knows? Okay, let me get you a bit closer. So yeah, I started just exploring this installation, and yeah, I was kidding, I didn't actually expect to find any bitcoins or nothing. I found all those files we initially saw before when we hooked this thing up to my Mac, and I really thought this was going to be it. I mean, this is something we did many times on my channel when exploring old computers. Just, seeing what kind of applications this person had, or games, or whatever. But since this hard drive wasn't that old, there was something on there that I really didn't anticipate. And after clicking on a random file that took me to a web browser, I saw something that made my heart race with horror. Do you see that little icon in the top right corner? Yeah, this guy didn't sign out from his Chrome profile. And man, the amount of personal information, the whole body shake in fear. I will of course be blurring all of these shots, and I won't be showing any personal information in this video of course, but man, this was scary. Not only did I have access to his browser history, but I had access to login information to so many sites and applications, like his Gmail account. Ooh, that's bad. Ooh. I also had access to his recovery information, like his address and phone number, full name and surname. Oh no. And depending on where you stand on cybersecurity, you might not think this is such a big deal. But what's worse is when I got to his Gmail account, I could see all sorts of incredibly sensitive information and email there. Ooh, that's bad. Oh, that's bad. Oh, no. I mean, just to give you an example, he had a whole bunch of messages having to do with his PayPal account. And these were not just spam or advertisements, if you know what I mean. And he had a bunch of saved login information like that. There's so many passwords, man. I mean, I was able to get into his Facebook and Instagram account. And I mean, not just social media, but things having to do with finances and stuff. Oh no, man. Oh, no. And there were no two-factor authentication attempts like you would have with your phone or something. But I really hope that this guy did get some notifications at least on his phone. And I really hope he was shitting his pants and thinking about what a stupid thing he did. And I do understand that there are people who are just not aware of how dangerous this can be. I mean, if this fell into the wrong hands, it could absolutely ruin your life. And you might say, well, you're the one who took his hard drive out of the dumpster. But honestly, I'm so glad that I did, because I know there are people out there hunting for other people's data. And who knows who could have gotten their hands on this hard drive if I hadn't pulled it out of the dumpster first. So I hope this video demonstrates how important protecting your data is nowadays. And please, if you already know that, just take the time to educate some people around you. Especially no older people in your family, perhaps your parents or grandparents if they're using a computer. And for the love of Christ, if you're disposing of your old computers or hard drives, make sure those things are wiped. Also, for things like your email or social media, things that contain sensitive personal information, make sure you have two-factor authentication turned on, because that would have likely prevented me from gaining access to all that data. And I'm curious, what would you do if you were in my place? Would you contact this person and tell him to change all his passwords? Did you have a similar experience when finding somebody else's old computer? Let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, you might want to consider subscribing. As you saw, I have a ton of other old computers, and I'm gonna be doing many more videos on them. And if you can, I would really appreciate your support on Patreon. It really helps out the smaller channels like mine. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers.